So it's crazy to see that yeah, fast food is a culprit for obesity, for all these chronic issues, but so is your bad shopping habits. It's not just, you can't just blame fast food. Once you gotta bring it back to responsibility, it's also people that are buying unhealthy food in supermarkets and stores, and they're actually paying for these commercials to be seen on TV because they're technically funding it. So if you really want to eat healthy, you can't just cut out fast food. That might help you a little bit, but you have to also consciously eat healthily.
Welcome, everyone, to the Frontline Warriors Club, where we live it, not in it. And join us on this mission as we raise consciousness. You can find us on wearefrontlinewarriors.com. Now, before we start the show, let's take a moment to inhale, exhale, and let the show begin.
On this episode, we're going to talk about the evolution of the American diet. We're going to dive back all the way to the 1940s and go by each decade to figure out how has our diet changed, how have we adapted to it. Because just by looking at, for example, our parents, their diet was completely different than our diet. And that's only like a 20 to a 40 year difference. And it's drastic, or it's actually very cool to take a look back and see how the availability of food kind of led to this giant progress in health research, nutritional research, and just the fact that food was more available. We started to then slowly broaden our, you could say, nutrition horizons, because usually you just eat what you have available. And if you go to a supermarket nowadays, what's available now is a lot more complex and greater than what was available 20, 30, 40 years ago. Even think about it pre-pandemic. Some of the stuff you see post-pandemic, you don't see as often as you did pre-pandemic for some reason, or for some reason it costs more. Like, why does this cost more? And how did this suddenly become less available than it was before? And it's crazy to look back and see how these diets and how food kind of came along and it just changed over time.
Yeah, it was definitely a trip doing show notes for this episode and seeing this trend for the past 80 years. If you're in your 20s, your grandparents are 70s and 80s or maybe 60s, and they've seen these changes that happen decade by decade. So just like we're like, wow, we saw a flip phone, now we have iPhones. This is what the diet is to them. They saw this crazy drastic change that we're going to talk about. And one thing that always is wild to visualize is if you compare a beach from the 1960s to the 2020s, where everybody looked nice and thin and beautiful. And then you look at our population, which is densely obese, no offense, right? It's just a reality of our diet. It's crazy to compare and what people are dying of, like sick. And I listened to a podcast, and the biggest pandemic right now is the diseases that are happening to people ages 25 to like 64. Disease was always for the older people, and they died. And we see younger patients coming in, diabetes, like DKA is one of those things we always see young people. And it's like, why is our diet causing such a unhealthy lifestyle, ultimately poor quality of life? And that's what we're all about. It's not the years of how long you live, but it's the years in those life. And if you don't have an optimal body, how are you going to enjoy those years?
You bring up a really, really good point. Like you mentioned, that these chronic diseases that we once saw in people that are 50, 60 years old, now you see those chronic issues in people that are in their 20s, early 30s, 40s. It's like, why is this, how is this disease progression, why is it now hitting a younger age? Why is this disease hitting a younger age? And how did it make that switch?
Right.
Because if you look at what's changing, one of the biggest things that you see change over time is, that we're going over today, is diet. Nutrition has changed over time. Disease has followed it. Cleaner conditions, more food, more nutrition. Think about scurvy. Scurvy was a big issue like 30, 40 years ago. Now you don't hear about it. Only time you hear about scurvy, that's with the vitamin C deficiency.
So that's why honestly, can you tell me what scurvy is?
So scurvy is deadly to you because you're missing vitamin C, and your body is not able to properly do each like mechanism, improper digestion, improper metabolization, because you need vitamin C for those processes to happen. And a lot of times sailors would get that overseas, so they would consume a lot of vitamin C. So that's why you see, like back in the storybooks that talk about lemons, like they always had citrus on the boat, because that's what prevents you getting scurvy. And I don't hear about it. So it's like you could figure out how to prevent these diseases, with the foods that you eat,
Yes.
right? And of course, not everything, you got genetics and things like that in it, but diet is a good predictor for how long and what quality you're going to have in life.
Right. And that's why like the field of epigenetics so profound, because we can change genes and regulate them, which causes these issues that we're going to talk about. Another interesting fact is
What's an interesting fact?
we always go a step deeper, and we know the layers of business and how diet things change too, where we talk about the food industries, the big, cereals, the milk advertisements that they poured, or how 1970s, like these big company like Kellogg's or whoever paid the Heart Association to say that, hey, meat consumption is bad, but sugar was always kind of on the low. And if you look at diabetes and inflammation, it's all related to usually just sugar consumption. And there's that, like, the underlying thing is, what is a standard American diet? Like, who makes these changes? And there's just people in government that have a lot of money that could throw money on lobbying that will affect these things. And we're literally seeing corporations be greedy and affecting human beings decade by decade and seeing these wild changes, man. Let's dive in.
Yeah, man. But one real quick note is to add to your point, I think the main cause of that happening is like the availability of the food around you. Because let's say a grocery store is 40 minutes away from you, but 6 different restaurants are 10 minutes away from you, you're probably more likely to eat out than go grocery shopping. So that's kind of how the system kind of hacks you. And then that's why you see there's like a Starbucks in every location, right. McDonald's every location. Who owns almost
real estate?
Yeah, right. Best real estate. McDonald's. It's literally everywhere. So it's like that's how it makes so much money, because they make it so easily available. Yeah. And if it's food and it tastes good and it has at least some kind of nutrition, because you could survive off McDonald's for a long time. So your body's okay with having McDonald's, because you could survive years off of it, but you can't survive as long as somebody healthy. But your body's still alive, still living technically, because it's getting some kind of a food. It's getting some kind of a supplement, right?
It's one big social experiment. It's like the mouse in the maze, and we're all the little mice. And these industries did things. The speed of life has increased, where you don't have time to make breakfast anymore. You need to hurry up and make food quicker. And they people, just like you said, they capitalize on this real estate, these things, and you rather just pick up food. Just like, how often do you see a McDonald's?
Taco Tuesday, bro. Wing Wednesday. I'm down.
Yes. You got Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts that has the best real estate to get your coffee on the way to all these strategic points where your business is. What are the chances you're going to go make coffee at home? It's just wild how that works, which is a whole marketing aspect to it too. And
right. And if you think about it, making that coffee at home, comparing that to waiting for a Starbucks, that probably takes the same amount of time. But look how they got you hooked already. They got you into this program where it's like, oh, Starbucks, it's gonna be better. Even if you get a plain regular blend with just cream, you're still choosing that over coffee that you can make at home, which is probably better quality, if not the same.
Yeah.
Because there's just, for some reason, it became convenient because now that's your standard. So if you're able to have somebody to come in your store for 30 days straight, they're gonna get used to that instead of you making your coffee, because you're already in a routine. So it's like they program a little routine where your routine consists of stopping by their place. And once they get you on that for a few months, that's your new routine. That's your new norm.
It's fun. Get some Starbucks on the way.
Everyone's talking about it,
You got your nice little cup. It's Christmas. You show up to work.
Branded. Yes. Red cups for Christmas,
And another thing big epiphanies
bouncing
in
back
this
and
podcast,
forth.
right? Yeah, it's great, man. Just like we have, let me word this properly. Just like everything is about speed and convenience in our current society, and we have outsourced cooking food to eating food, which led to diseases and obesity, we're doing the same thing with our mental health, where we want this one fix all in America, this quick pill for the quick fix, and we are suppressing the healing or whatever it has to do with mental health, and we're just taking a pill to fix my PTSD, my anxiety, my underlying disorders, and that's never the case. Just like in food, convenience is not the case. We have to take care of this body and nourish it.
Yeah, man. Fact too. We could talk about that all day, every day, man.
Yeah, you guys got us freaking riled up on these topics.
It's about to be a long episode.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to the 1940s. The Second World War was going on. Hitler was invading Poland. We went on a lot of stress there. This is why Polish people always have, scarcity mindset. But anyways, food was rationized in the United States. Meat, cheese, butter, cooking fats, sugars, they were heavily restricted. They weren't on shelves, and people relied more on the high carbohydrate diets, which were lower in fat today. And this is going to be the 80-year timeline that we're going to discuss and how things have changed.
Taking it 10 years after that, 1950s. So during this time, people ate what was in season. So if it wasn't a season for strawberries, guess what? You not have access to strawberries. There was no big supermarkets yet at that time, so you ate whatever either you grew or someone else grew, and you kind of switched or whatever. It wasn't like these smaller shops that they had, like your local stuff. That's all you had. And what's interesting to look back is people ate less often at that time. So when you think about typical standard dinner now, it's a little bit different than what was a standard dinner in the 1950s. So they had basically a few big courses at their dinner time, and at the end they would have something sweet. So it's like almost they combined this one meal into enough food to basically last them the whole day. So you had a little bit of breakfast, and you would have basically dinner. That's what it mainly consisted of. Maybe you get a lunch, but 1950s wasn't the biggest for lunches yet. So it's like you had one small meal, another big meal, and that's basically how you lived. But of course, it wasn't as fast as it is today. So a dinner took a lot longer than it does now because the family had to cook it. That took probably over an hour. It took a lot longer to make food. That's why you didn't have as much chances to eat. It was like, this takes me this long to make. We're going to have it one time, and then we're going to carry on with the day.
Yeah. And we always hear stories about our grandparents that they just ate this one meal. They took this one piece of bacon, and they worked in their farmlands all day, and somehow they survived.
Yeah, and they had dinner time, and that's it. Yeah,
yes,
it's crazy because now you can eat all day, every day if you wanted to.
Yeah,
like think about
Q1 hour.
Yeah, think about a solid day off where you just had a long day and you just want to just chill. You don't want to do anything that day, and you're gonna have a day for yourself, and and this happens to be like your cheat day, just like your whatever day. Hey, I'm eating like all day, dude. I'm eating all day, bro. Nothing else to do but eat. You know what I'm saying?
Stop by, sit down, stop by the snacks, a little bit, some almonds, goji berries,
yeah, dude,
chocolate covered almonds.
Yeah, that was an option 67 years ago. That's crazy to think about, man.
And then looking at the 60s, so this is where things slowly started to change. War has slowed down. I think we got into Vietnam sometime in the late 60s, but I don't want to go too much into history. And we started consuming things like heavy starches, breads, potatoes, and cereals. So our dishes changed. There was more diversification of food in the United States, and we started consuming record levels of meat and sugar. And this is where it's hard to find out the research whether meat is causing this or diabetes, essentially, because if you look at all these meta-analysis and studies, the groups don't really eliminate one or the other. There's always diets mixed in meat and sugar. And this is where the conspiracy started, where meat is the freaking issue, eggs, high cholesterol, it's causing plaque and atherosclerosis and causing heart attacks. And then also for the first time, frozen meals started becoming a thing, frozen foods, and they were available in stores.
1970s, you had an increase of frozen food availability. You had more vegetables, and people were eating about a pound of red meat a week. And that's actually more. They used to eat more meat in the 70s than people actually eat now. Because I believe people eat about a half a pound of red meat a week. That's crazy because we eat more than that a day, right? We eat a lot of meat. We eat a lot of meat. But think about the red meat. We haven't had steaks in it for a minute. Oh yeah, we carne asada though. Now we're chill. Never mind.
We eat red meat.
Take that back.
I don't know if that's our vice, but we eat a well-balanced diet.
I mean, a lot of my diet is meat. To be honest, like I want to say probably like 80% of my diet is meat, which is crazy.
And this is where precision nutrition comes. Assess your stool, right? How does your poop look? If it's very pasty, maybe you have a higher fat diet due to red meat. If you're leaving streaks around the toilet bowl, you might have to cut back on the fat. You know what I'm saying? You gotta assess yourself, Pete.
Not like describing poop halfway in a diet episode, bro. Yeah. Talk about food and poop.
I know, right? We're nurses. This is what we do best.
Yeah, so 1970s, also white bread became more available. It started becoming wrapped in plastic. Food started lasting longer on shelves. And you saw a little bit of a rise in store-bought food. People started having greater access to purchasing power in different variety of foods. But the staples still were meat, vegetables, and bread. People have been eating bread for such a long time. The thing is, The issue isn't bread. The issue is how the bread is made now. Because if you look at a typical white loaf, it's not just like flour, water, and whatever else they put in bread. It's just like 10 other things.
Yes, enriched flour, and it's causing those high insulin spikes. Going into the 80s, our diet started molding more and more. The introduction of portable, microwavable foods became a thing. Women started working a lot more in the workforce, and quicker breakfast had to almost started becoming a thing. So the hamburger got kind of created in a way, and even milk, it stopped being in glass bottles. It started being in plastic cardboard cartons and covered in wax. Or let me back that up. The cartons were covered in wax, not the milk. There was no infusion of wax and milk.
Yeah, maybe some brands. But those pesticides are just as bad as wax. Maybe I think wax might be even better than those monogluconate. What was it called? Gluconate? Was it gluconate?
Oh, monosodium gluconate?
Yeah. No, not MSG, but the preservative one that they spray over people. That Monsanto uses.
Glyphosate.
Glyphosate. Glyphosate, yeah. Then we got glyphosate, man.
We're laughing about this because I pronounced it wrong in the previous episode, and I pronounced it wrong again, but English is my second language.
We'll use that card every time we get.
I know, right? It's my forever excuse.
You did 1980s, yeah?
I'm trying to learn Spanish. It's 3. I'm going to be messing this stuff.
I was learning Spanish. I was learning numbers with Luke a little bit ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, 17 means... 17? Yeah, 17 means 17. But you just did 1980s, yeah?
Yes, 1990s now.
1990s, you saw a big increase in the variety of foods you could buy. Supermarkets slowly started to open up. It started to become a thing, and this accessibility became more. You could have more exotic vegetables, more exotic fruits, and what also happened is, like Matt said before, 1980s was also the cooking of food, the creation of food. So instead of something having to take about an hour to make, it dropped down to about 20 minutes. So the prepness for food became a lot shorter. People started having less time spent in the house with a family. It was more about going to work, spending most of your time there. So you needed a quick and easy access to food. And I don't want to blame the women, but I believe in the 1980s, women started
cooking their own food.
Yeah, women stopped cooking food, and you saw this big push for longer shelf lives.
Yeah, it could have been 50-50, but the men just weren't too good in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Who knows what happened there? But I love cooking food, guys.
God
God damn.
good. Yeah.
Everybody should be learning how to cook some bomb-ass meals.
But food always tastes better when it's made for you. Like, I don't care if it's like eggs. I'm going to tell you right now, I can make eggs with butter, but if you make eggs with butter, they're probably going to taste better for some reason. Same with anybody that makes them.
Yeah.
How does that work? It's perfect, dude.
That's why we love eating out.
Yeah, right?
It just tastes so much better than in our own kitchen. We always say we never give ourselves so much gratitude or positive reinforcement when we make food. It's always it's okay. Could have been better. This was missing.
Yeah.
We never say I made a bomb ass sandwich.
Yeah. Right? But sometimes we do say that, but then it's when you say it, you kind of almost regret saying it because you're like, damn, because I don't think it was a bomb ass sandwich, dude. I could have needed this. But yeah, you're completely right, man.
So 2000s, this is where people started becoming a lot more health conscious. We started seeing correlations between diet and obesity. We started seeing those popular TV shows that was Super Size Me and the whole juicing cleanse, the other diet, which was Sick, Fat, and Nearly Dead on Netflix. Chocolate, chip cookies, Twizzlers, and all that started kind of making a push away from our school cafeterias because it was unhealthy. And McDonald's, fun fact, started introducing salad in their menu. So this was a big shift from more processed foods, a lot less fruits, and a lot less vegetables. Snacking continued to be on the rise, which also contributes to diabetes, of course, because you're not really ever resting your pancreas and those insulin spikes.
Yeah, good point, man.
2010s, things continued to get worse. We started getting better with technology, smartphones, streaming services. You had Uber Eats, Postmates, all these apps, and the convenience of just sitting on the couch and enjoying your best TV shows just became a big thing. And then also climate change started kind of taking a lot more effects. I remember in 28 when that was already 2004, Bush and Al Gore running. Al Gore was making the whole climate change thing.
Did you pay attention to the Al Gore and the Bush race? Because I vaguely remember, looking back when I was a kid, I remember a little bit on the news, people talking about it. But do you remember anything about it?
Regarding climate change?
No, regarding Al Gore and Bush.
I mean, I was never really into politics, so I don't have those great details. But I know that he was pushing climate change and glaciers are melting, all this stuff, and they very well could be. I'm not, I'm not disagreeing here. But let me,
We're not geographers, guys. We're not geographers.
yeah. Don't quote me on this one. Quote Al Gore, but all the scientists are saying that.
Next episode, are glaciers melting?
Yes. Not that I'm skeptical, but sometimes we're so aware of the propaganda that happened in the food industry with milk, with processed foods, with blaming meat instead of like sugars. Where what if they're blaming things as climate change? What if our Earth is going through a crazy cycle
just because
there's more solar flares and it's heating up and it's only going to last 50 years, but all these rich ass people are aware of it, so they're using this as propaganda to push one of those things, or just go green and be all electricity versus fossil fuel. Who knows? I'm not against it, but I do want to save the penguins.
Yeah, they're cool, dude.
Because I want Antarctica to be out there. I want to take my kids out there.
They gotta be out there. Didn't they find like a zombie virus in Arctic or something?
They have some recent stuff.
Yeah, some recent stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad China doesn't have their hands on it, so hopefully all is well there. But yeah, it's wild. It's like if there's some kind of zombie strain, now we're digressing here. Don't be telling the public about it. Just keep it freaking in your level 5 lab. Keep it low key. Yeah. Don't tell us. So everybody's kind of scratching their head like, oh man, we should get ready for the zombie apocalypse.
Actually, you know what's crazy? All right, that's one last thing, and I had the 2020 because 2020 was a drastic change. Now
you sound like a forecaster on the news. Be right back.
So yesterday I was completely off topic, but yesterday I was hanging out in the basement, chilling, doing an episode, looking at some stuff, and I dug up 3 different operations where the CIA was selling drugs to the public. So we can look at them later. 3, they're released. I'm not gonna dive into it right now because not that episode for it. But I'm just letting you know after this episode, I'll share them with you.
Yeah.
We talk about them.
Okay. And if you guys like this kind of stuff, let us know. We could probably do some conscious,
so random,
conscious history of how to be more mindful and the bad realization of the government. Yeah. I don't know how else to call it, dude.
But jumping into the 2020s, we've all been through it. The pandemic happened. So a crazy statistic is that through the pandemic, people gained anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds, which is crazy because gyms were closed. People didn't understand the fact that you could go outside and go for a run instead of staying inside. People lost their jobs. People had to stay home from work. And look how drastic of a shift that was for us. And look how our physical health took a hit. This is more of a physical health episode, but think about all the mental health issues that stem from it. Because people's lives were so drastically changed where they didn't know how to make up for that change. It's almost like their computer got turned off and then rebooted in imagine your computer being a 94, gets rebooted and now it's like a MacBook. Drastically changed. People didn't know how to react to that kind of situation. And instead of like digging deep in themselves and trying to stay healthy because they knew that number one way to prevent any kind of illness, chronic, viral, bacterial, any kind of disease like that is to be healthy, stay healthy. And what they chose to do is just stay home and do nothing. Even people that were actively going to the gym decided to stay home. They couldn't even realize the fact that, hey, I could have went outside, went for a jog because guess what? I've been at home for 9 hours. Let me go outside. What's the issue with going outside? There was never an issue with going outside. And just lack of exercise and our poor nutrition on top of that, a lot of people died. And people got sick that could have prevented being sick. And that's a little bit more about exercise, but diet adds on to that. When you're stuck at home, what were you doing? Probably eating nonstop. That one chill day that you take a month for yourself or a week for yourself became every day. And you almost got lost on a dietary level because you just had so much access to food and you weren't leaving your home and you weren't doing other things where your time got preoccupied. You filled it with eating food and doing nothing. So it's crazy how we always say that, hey, time's our number one resource. But then when someone gives you extra 8 hours because you're at home now, what do you do with it? You don't do anything productive. Right. So it's almost like for some reason, our subconscious pulls us to this laziness. And that laziness affects us physically and mentally. And part of laziness is diet, because if you want to eat healthy, you have to try to eat healthy. It just doesn't just come because it's a lot easier to just put anything in your mouth. Putting a cookie in your mouth is just as easy as putting a fruit in your mouth. But yeah, for some reason we choose the cookie because we have some kind of conscious grab towards that high fructose corn syrup. We get reprogrammed in a way where that becomes even more addictive because you're eating it more and more and more.
And I want to piggyback off your point. Amazing points. You provided a very accountability standpoint to this. I'm gonna go into like the bigger realm here of capitalism in a way, where we have to be very careful. I believe knowledge is power, right? So we have to be very careful with the trends that are happening in the 2010s, 2020s, where just like our food standards have changed due to capitalization of these big industries, you have influencers that get paid to promote different products, latest trends, best protein powders, the household staples to be healthy. We have to be conscious because marketing and capitalism is a real thing, and be very conscious of the foods that you're consuming, whether they're actually healthy, and do your own research, whether this is actually the good thing for you. And that's like a big problem where all these like diet trends are happening now. You have to be keto because this is bad for you in carbs. You have to be vegan because meat is bad for you. What happened to just being a human and overall getting nutrition? And these are nutritional myths. Eating just meat and fruits isn't the best diet for you, or just being vegan. It's about nutrition, and nutrition is a lot different than trends and beliefs. Now you're going into like almost like a form of a religion of things, and that's not how it should be. That's not what our body needs. But of course, everybody's different. So disclaimer, if your doctor tells you to eat a specific way or it works for you, do that. But don't follow trends, because that's like a thing of capitalism in a sense that we see in our society.
Yeah, there's a reason why you don't see apples being advertised on TV. There's a reason why you see cereal being advertised, all these other foods being advertised that aren't, you could say, one ingredient or naturally occurring foods.
Which reminds me, that's one thing I missed is with capitalism, nothing that's free for you like sleep and exercise and movement is going to be advertised. Yes.
Yeah, like tomatoes, for example. You grow those. Our parents grow them every year. No one sees those on TV. Why? Because if they tell you you could grow tomatoes, you're not going to need to buy tomatoes, right? So why would they market you tomatoes if it's something that you could do yourself?
Yes.
Then taking a look at like what do people consume in a majority wise. So we know that food is broken down to proteins, carbs, fats, all that kind of stuff. So where is our energy actually coming from? What you could say the macronutrients are we actually eating, and at how much? So a 2017 to 2018 NHANES study was done. It examined on average what the typical standard American diet consists of and how much of it typically is proteins, carbs, and fats. So 16% of all calories a person eats a day comes from protein. 47% comes from carbs, and 36% comes from fat. And 22% of all those calories come from added sugars, which is wild because that's a fourth of the whole nutritional content of a person that eats the standard American diet comes from just added sugars. 24% of your calories. That's crazy. That was not something that people were doing 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And to bring up Matt's point before, that's how we see these chronic issues that we normally saw in 50, 60, 70-year-olds are coming now to the 20, 30, 40-year-olds. Because there's this giant shift for these added sugars, these processed foods. Because think about it, guys. In 1900s, people ate more meat than they do now. More red meat in a week than do now. Now, I'm not saying red meat is super healthy for you. I'm not saying it's like this magical thing. But you're taking out red meat. What are you filling it with? Are you filling it with unnecessary carbs, refined sugars? Because if you're taking away meat and you're filling it with some garbage that you know isn't probably the best for you or is nutritionally dense, then are you really doing yourself a favor? You're really not. And that's why you mentioned those diet fads, different kinds of diet, keto, all that stuff. You know, that's just a way to make you money, because guess what? If you see a keto diet being advertised, what are you going to do? You're going to look it up on Google. So you're already making Google money, right? And then you're making any website money that writes about the keto diet. So it's a giant capitalist thing, like Matt said a little bit ago, because it doesn't matter what kind of diet name you're on. You should just be eating healthy, and you should be eating what fits with your body. That's why we have gluten intolerance. So people can't eat a lot of bread. So eat less bread and eat more fats and more protein. You could supplement different things. You could change things, but you shouldn't fall for this like paleo diet is the best for me because 60% of Californians are on the paleo diet.
Right. Yeah, it's big things to be very wary about. So what are the current dietary American guidelines? So we have to follow healthy eating patterns every single day, customizing nutritional dense foods with vegetables, with fruits, and your personal preferences, and limiting foods that are high in sugar, saturated fats, sodium, basically everything processed, avoiding alcohol, drugs, and focusing on those nutrient dense food groups such as superfoods. You have those nuts, those seeds like chia seeds, vegetables, and just honestly, the best thing to look at is color. The more color on your plate between meats, different types of carbs, starchy carbs, and vegetables, fruits, that's all just going to add to the longevity of your life.
Yeah. And we talk about fast food as well. So what's a crazy number to look at is only 37% of adults in the United States eat fast food regularly. So that is a pretty good chunk. That's over a third of people, right? But then what about the other 60%? If the other 60% are also unhealthy, is fast food the only problem that we should be talking about? And it's not, because majority of people that have these chronic issues, they're lacking protein in their diet. So it's like, yeah, we say fast food is bad for you, but only 37% of people are eating fast food technically. So then other 60% that don't eat fast food, what are they eating? What are they consuming? Just because they're not eating fast food doesn't mean they're eating healthy. They're consuming more processed food. They're consuming more of these frozen meals. Like there are some decently healthy frozen meals, but majority of them are pretty bad. Is your diet mainly something that consists of you putting something in a microwave, heating it up, and then eating it? That's probably not a good way to eat at all.
Yes.
So it's crazy to see that fast food is a culprit for obesity, for all these chronic issues, but so is your bad shopping habits. It's not just, you can't just blame fast food. Once you gotta bring it back to responsibility, it's also the people that are buying unhealthy food in supermarkets and stores, and they're actually paying for these commercials to be seen on TV because they're technically funding it. So if you really want to eat healthy, you can't just cut out fast food. That might help you a little bit, but you have to also consciously eat healthily.
Right, and that's a very good point. We also have to change the conscious collective of what it means to eat healthy.
Yeah.
I'm at work, I'm having lunch, I have some salad with some sprinkled tortilla chips and some beef with some avocado, and somebody's like, wow, you're eating healthy. And I'm just like thinking to myself, am I really? Or is this just a decent standard that I have that we don't have as a threshold, as a standard in our society? And we think that eating a salad or greens is a sign of healthy and everything else is not. We should be having that broad spectrum diet for everybody, man.
Yeah.
So it's just collectively changing of what it means to be healthy. What is a standard that we should talk? Because our standards have dropped, right? Processed foods, everything on it quick, just seeing this 80-year trend. We need to collectively change consciously what it actually is to be optimally healthy.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the dietary guidelines do get a good chunk of this right, but there is something that they get wrong. So as we've mentioned before, the different amount of percentages and a different amount of macronutrients people get, carbs are in the highest ranking of that order. So what the dietary guidelines recommend is they say that you should eat a high carb diet. And the thing is with that studies now show that a lower carb diet is actually more healthier for you than a higher carb diet. So the DJ is saying that, hey, if you're not hitting your caloric amount that you should hit, you should fill that up with carbs. That's what they recommend. They don't recommend fats. They don't recommend protein. They say that, hey, if you're eating 1,800 calories and you need 2,100 calories, those extra ones should be consumed. You should be eating carbs for the rest of those.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not even saying what kind of carbs. We should be focused on nutrient dense, because if your body's starving of nutrients, you're not gonna have satiety in your diet.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the big thing that we want to prevent here, that they're trying to prevent, is the metabolic cascade of disorders that's causing ultimately insulin resistance. And I mean, we could talk about cancer, inflammation, heart disease, infertility. Everything is linked to this metabolic disorder that's happening. Metabolic, which is the breakdown, don't know what it is in Greek, but ultimately we're having a poor way of breaking up food, causing chronic inflammation, leading to all these diseases that a lot could be just preventable from. Exactly like what Pete said, accountability in your diet.
Yeah, because people don't understand that when you break down certain things like carbs, protein, fats, there's inflammation linked to all this, and the ones that produce the highest amount of inflammation are carbs. It's this spike in amount of glucose in your blood that causes this promotion of inflammation, and this inflammation, it just cascades down to all the other issues that we're gonna go over, like hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, renal issues, all that kind of stuff. It just stems from that consistent flow of glucose in your blood. And it's crazy to think about that a food or a certain amount of food can actually be toxic to us and not healthy for us in the long run.
Yeah. And it's interesting because inflammation is the person's immune system being triggered. We'll look at all, we don't have research on it, but look at all this stuff that we see in the hospital with autoimmune disorders, and we can't associate anything. It's just the body fighting itself. So we literally have so much inflammation. It's like a bee that has so much noise in its circuit where it can't pick up the right frequencies of where to go. Mm-hmm. In our body, there's so much inflammation. We're communicating bad information to our body, and the body's literally attacking itself. Yeah. And this is what's leading, also inflammation is leading to a lot of chronic diseases, which is due to this process of glycation. And glycation could be easily repaired by the body, but when it comes overwhelmed due to high diet, your immune system is revved up. When your immune system is cleaning up your debris, there's chemical reactions that are happening that are damaging the body, that's resulting in this increased inflammation. And this is where research is showing that this is what's creating like the plaque, atherosclerosis, which is sticking to our cells and our tissues, not necessarily saturated fats that are creating like pockets of plaque.
Yeah. To kind of simplify this is when you eat refined carbs and sugars, it hits your bloodstream so quick that your body doesn't understand what to do with this, so it attacks it, has to get rid of it. Because normally glucose should be flying into your bloodstream in like a solid, streamlined fashion. And if you rush your body with this, your body literally does not know what to do. It freaks out, it starts attacking it, and then like Matt mentioned, it causes the inflammation. Because instead of your body saying, okay, that's glucose, let's handle it how we're supposed to handle it, it freaks out because there's such a great amount of it. It's almost like it gets invade. And then by the time it realizes that, hey, we got to process this, it's already starting out that inflammation, because then you got to calm it down and bring it back up.
Yes, and linking it to heart disease, this inflammation that's happening by the immune system is causing injury. We have lining in the tissue that becomes scarred, that creates, again, like I said, atherosclerosis, which then leads to the blockages. And this is all from that same process, glycation, from just an overconsumption of carbs. Mm-hmm. It goes into diabetes as well. It's just wild, guys, how everything is linked up. And we see it in the hospital too. When Peter and I get an admission or we're getting a report on a patient and they mention like diabetes, we can already include heart attack, heart failure, maybe getting stents, diabetes. Diabetes leads into kidney disease because sugar is toxic to the nephrons. Like, it's just wild how the history of the patient is always linked up to these majority issues.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, working in healthcare, you literally see everyone's chronic diseases that walk into the hospital. And majority of them, like I want to say, like a solid 90% of people that we see in the hospital, they have diabetes and hypertension.
Yeah. And that's what makes our show and our information so valuable, because not only are we looking at research and trying to understand the knowledge aspect of it, we have real life experiences, patient to patient, that we've seen through 12 years plus of experience, that we see the same linkage. It could be even anxieties and irritable bowel syndrome. It's just all there for us, man. We're living the experiment from day to day, and we're just collecting data, man. Yeah. And this is why we could say what we're saying and why our information is truthful and why this is such a big issue, because we see it in freaking the front line of where people are passing away, especially in 2020.
Yeah. And with diabetes, what a crazy statistic and a crazy number is that 10% in 2018, 10% of the U.S. population had diabetes. That's 34 million people in the United States had diabetes in 2018. It's 2022 now. It's probably a lot higher than that. And to give you a simple rundown of how diabetes happens is you consume a lot of refined carbs, a lot of sugars, a lot of carbs in general throughout the day, and you always have this elevated level of glucose in your blood. And your pancreas, your I believe it's B cells, they make insulin. And a higher glucose load in the bloodstream causes the workload of the pancreas to increase. And if your pancreas is always working hard, think about it as a car. If you're always holding down the gas, eventually that car is going to fail. It's never stopped. It's never turned off. Same with the pancreas. If you always have a high amount of glucose in your blood because you're eating carbs nonstop throughout the day, your pancreas is always making insulin, always making insulin, always making insulin, and never stops, never gets a break. And that leads to inflammation in the pancreas, you could say, because it's overstressed. And that's how you get diabetes. And now you're seeing an increase in type 1 diabetes in really young children, and that's being linked to genetics. And those genetics are being tied to the diet of the mother and mental health of the mother. And it's crazy how now your life as a child and as a person is also directed by the diet that your mother and father chose to eat when you were in your mom's womb, which is crazy. That's how it affects you. Your mom's blood goes into the baby. And that's how the baby grows, is through the mom's blood, right? So if the mom's blood has poor amount of vitamins, poor amount of minerals, she's not getting enough calories in her body, or too much calories, or not the right vitamins, or just not eating healthy, that directly affects the baby. And that baby might have poor health outcomes coming out of the womb. It's crazy how that affects. That's why, like, we're humans, we're all like this one giant like infinity symbol, because what you eat doesn't only affect you, it probably affects the person around you as well. Yeah. Because if you're going out to eat, if you're saying, hey, Peter, let's go to Taco Tuesday, I'm probably gonna say Taco Tuesday, and you're affecting my diet, not just your diet. And then let's just say you're a female, now you're pregnant, your diet not only affects the husband, it also affects the child, and a child's child, and on a continuum.
We're all just synergetic beings, man. Another aspect of our American diet we just talked about diabetes, cancer. Cancer is also linked to high carb intake, and cancer cells primarily feed on high sugar. Even when we do PET scans, they inject sugar into your bloodstream, and they do a scan to see where tumors can be, because tumors are consuming high amounts of glucose. And
they want to grow, man. They're growing machines.
Yeah. And when it comes to meat, we've been talking about red meat, and we're not against red meat. We include it in our diet. I think the standard American diet shamed it very well. The USDA dietary guidelines said we should limit our intake. But when we look at the research, and there's a meta-analysis with over 118 articles, over 6 million participants, didn't necessarily link red meat as a issue. There's no evidence that red meat is directly causing cancer or increasing the overall mortality over a lifetime. And I think, what are the details? What do they suggest? That there's low evidence if you consume unprocessed meat 3 times per week. There was no association.
Yeah. So basically, it said that if you cut down your meat eating by 3 servings, it's not gonna do much to affect if you're gonna get cancer or not. You know, if you think about it, if you're taking away with 3 servings, and if you're adding refined carbs, added like processed sugars, processed starches, things like that, that's not good either. Because remember, like, once you eat carbs, that becomes more widely available as energy and glucose in your bloodstream than protein is. Carbs are broken down quicker by our body. So if you think about it, if you have cancer, and like you said, the PET scans, they inject glucose in your system to figure out where this cancer is, because it sucks it up. Cancer is going to grow quicker on a high carb based diet, because your glucose is always going to be up there, and your cancer is always going to be sucking in those calories and that energy, and it's always going to be growing on its own.
Makes me kind of wonder how keto diets affect cancer. Whether there's also is there any studies on?
Well, keto helps with what are those two issues? Some with an S. I'll remember them.
Another perspective, because usually the whole red meat thing is linked to climate change. And let's just say maybe we're going to have some crazy climate change in 200 years if this trajectory continues. Well, if we just remove meat, which we are understanding how important protein is, and we're replacing it with high carb, it's going to be so detrimental to the overall society. We're going to be so sick, where we might barely even make it through the freaking slightest storms, because we're going to be so sick and not be able to function. So we're so focused on Mother Earth. Yes, she's important, but we should prioritize ourselves because we're actually the important human here living. Yeah. And maybe we could find other ways based on research and understanding technology to fix the climate changes. So you shouldn't just take away our diet right now and take away what's actually important for us.
Yeah, the keto diet thing was beneficial in Crohn's and ulcerative colitis.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. Inflammation, keto reduces inflammation.
Yeah. Which dives directly into the inflammatory bowel diseases and the gut microbiota. So it's just crazy how far this inflammation stems, because realize that your blood is going through every organ, through every system. So if there's inflammation going on in one part of the body, there's more likely inflammation going on in other parts of the body. And your bowels are a big portion of that. Your bowels take up the majority of your whole body in weight and in size. It plays a big role. It breaks down your food. It is a reason why you're able to take this food, put it in your mouth, and live. It's due to your gut. Yeah. And your bowels, all that stuff. And what plays directly with that as well is all that bacteria, all those living organisms in your gut, because they're the ones that help break it down and help process all these things, help break it down even further. And if you're eating a diet that's unhealthy and you have a lot of inflammation, well, guess what? That inflammation is hitting your gut. That's how people have diarrhea randomly, or they're always constipated when they're anxious and all that kind of stuff, or they have diarrhea because they're anxious. All these issues stem from inflammation. And it's crazy to take a look at that and see how deeply rooted the importance of diet actually is to our overall health. And not to mention that our gut makes a lot of our neurotransmitters. Serotonin, dopamine, they're all derived from the gut. And if you're eating poor, that might be a reason why you're feeling poor, because you're not getting enough nutrition, enough vitamins, enough minerals, enough anything else that your body needs. And then you feel like crap because you don't have enough fuel to actually power this machine that you're working with. And of course, you're going to feel like crap because you're not being fueled. If you're always hungry, you're never going to be happy, if you think about it. But then again, if you feel full, but you're not nutritionally full, that's like a hit on the happiness, because you're going to be trying to figure out, okay, I'm eating, I'm feeling full, I'm satisfied, but I'm still feeling like shit. Why is this happening? Because the quality of food that you're eating makes that big of an impact.
Yes. Such a damn jam-packed episode with knowledge, man. Take a little sip of water and digest that.
I'm taking some sip too, dude.
The connections continue with diet. We're going to jump into infertility.
Big one.
There's a lot happening right now where there's episodes and people talking about sperm reduction, infertility clinics is becoming a thing, which is just another Band-Aid approach to the bigger problem that we're uncovering here. And we think it's only females, but it's also males. So infertility, high amounts of sugar is affected by the glycation process that we talked about, which leads to oxidative stress. Oxidative stress damages our reproductive organs. And when it happens, there's a reduction in ovarian function, and there's also a suppression of female steroid production, follicular development, which is part of the ovaries. And this also leads into the male reproductive system, where the male testes capabilities gets damaged by the glycation oxidative stress on the normal production of sperm cells. So we see the double-edged sword in both sexes, where there's a reduction of infertility and women are having trouble getting pregnant, but there's also an issue of having healthy sperm for men due to diet and exercise and everything else that we mentioned, where the male can't provide healthy sperm to get the freaking female fertilized and plant an egg and have a baby.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And people go to the doctor trying to figure out what's happening, and they give them pills, tell them to do certain things, but no one really addresses the diet first. Like, for example, I know there are a few of my family members, they're trying to have kids and they couldn't have kids, and then I kind of look at what they eat, and I'm like, damn, they're not really healthy people. And it's like their doctor's telling them this, telling them that, but no one said, hey, did you try to change your diet? Maybe that might fix things. So try to change your diet, and then let's do these labs again in 6 months. Because it's not gonna happen overnight. It might take a year. But hey, if you try for 6 months, if you can't have a baby and you change up your diet, eat healthy, eat all the recommendations, eat what you're supposed to be eating for 6 months, and you see even a slight improvement in your blood work, wouldn't that push you to at least try to get for another 6 months and you see another little bit of improvement, and then guess what? A year later, you're having a kid. Hey, you never know. You might have some strong swimmers after that first year, and you might get like twins or triplets.
You're a fertile man.
Yeah, you're pumping out like crazy. You might have too much kids, dude. You know what I'm saying?
You'd have to get your nuts tied,
Yeah.
man. I'm joking.
Imagine this. Imagine if you're, as a dude, struggling to have kids, you hop on a diet, eat healthier for a year, and then 10 years later, you gotta get a vasectomy because you're just popping them out like nothing. You're like 12 kids deep, and you can't afford them all. You're like,
Pull-out
shit.
method is not working anymore.
It's not working.
Condoms, dude.
Yeah.
Condoms are sperm is running
Dude,
through the condoms.
That sperm is so good, it's hopping from the sheets into the vagina, dude. It's straight to the cervix, bro. That thing's still swimming when it's not supposed to, bro. That's how strong they're gonna be, man.
Oh, yeah. We got the laughies post night shift. This is our personality, guys. So don't get offended by it. And if you do, y'all sensitive, man. Gotta get some thicker skin out here, right?
For sure.
Right, damn, those sperm jumping over from sheets, huh?
I'm telling you, they're swimmers, man. That's why you gotta be careful out there. But yeah, so another thing with this is fats. We saw a few years ago this push for, hey, fat free is the best. It's the healthiest thing. And we found that to be a lie. It directly affected hormones, screwed a lot of people over, and now we don't hear that anymore. But another big part of fats is your omega-3s and omega-6s. So the best ratio for your omega-3 to omega-6 is 1:4. So you should have more omega-6s than omega-4s, or sorry, omega-3s. And our diet is literally opposite of that. Our ratio is skewed to the unhealthier fats, and that's also shown a correlation with our hormones, with inflammation, with just overall health. And that's something that I just recently kind of read about. I read about omega-3s, I think you told me about it first, omega-3s, omega-6s, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
The ratio.
The ratio, yeah. It's 1:4. That's like the ideal one, but we're skewed the opposite way, and that's taken also a big impact on the prevalence of heart disease, of any kind of inflammation, because you're consuming a lot of the wrong fat. You're not getting enough of these omega oils in your system to promote proper and healthy metabolic function.
Yes, and a healthy tip for getting a lot less omega-6 or omega-3 oils was avoiding industrial seed oils and all the processed foods in your canned food, looking at nutritional labels, cereal, protein bars. If it has canola oil, vegetable oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, those are all oils that are causing this inflammation, which is causing the chronic diseases and the metabolic disease that we've been talking about for the past hour. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but it affects mental health. So these oils are directly impacting our mental health, which is causing depression, bipolar disorders, which we're only catching on to the mental health, the mind-gut connection, which is just becoming a thing. So we have to really create a healthy relationship between food and diet. As we talked about for the whole hour, it's completely detrimental, and not only it affects your body, but it's also going to connect and affect your mental health, where you're not going to have great quality of life. You're going to feel lazy. You're not going to be able to wake up. You're going to have brain fog, and it continues. It changes our brain chemistry, which changes our genetics, and it just like keeps on going, guys. If you really want to have optimize psychological health and great healthy well-being and actually enjoy the freaking fruits of life, you need to eat good. It matters.
Yeah, I think we had to flip. So I think we were saying that omega-6s are better for you. Omega-3s are better for you. I think
Omega-3s.
I think I said omega-6s are better if I did it, my bad, guys. So you want omega-3s, more omega-3s, omega-6s. So there was a giant decline in omega-3 polyunsaturated fats in our typical diets, and we had a giant spike in omega-6s. And those are more prevalent. They're more seen in your industrial seed oils. Okay. You could say all those kind of processed oils, things like that. They're high in omega-6s, and your healthier oils, like oils that are naturally derived, like in fish, all those things are healthier because they have more omega-3s. Because our diet is so skewed to the omega-6s because they're these typical oils that are industry driven and produce these inflammatory responses in our body. What's actually pretty cool that I looked up is there's these things called eicosanoids, and they have anti-inflammatory properties, and they're actually in your essential fatty acids. And if you don't get enough essential fatty acids, back to omega-3s, is you don't have enough of these eicosanoids. These are some interesting eicosanoids, right? Give it a try.
Eicosanoids.
Eicosanoids.
It's good.
Yeah, I did some research on this, guys. Believe me, I just sound like an idiot saying the word. But there's eicosanoids that are in omega-3s, and they actually promote anti-inflammatory properties, and they're the ones that are responsible for regulating blood pressure, lung function, and also help with blood clotting. So if you don't have enough of these eicosanoids, eicosanoids, bro, these eicosanoids in your body is going to be more prone to blood clots, more prone to strokes, more prone to heart attacks. You're even more prone to like certain cancers, like lung cancer, all that stuff, because your body isn't able to properly help with those functions, man. It's a new term for today.
Yes.
Eicosanoids.
Try to get the pronunciation.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
Right,
So how
does
does the standard American diet now affect mental health? Because we talked a lot about how it affects your physical health. We'll touch a little bit upon how it affects your mental health. So going back to the gut microbiome, we know that a lot of our hormones, a lot of our neurotransmitters are derived in our gut. So poor diet leads to pro-inflammatory responses, which then leads to poor gut health because you have this giant increase in an immune response in your gut. So it's like your body's battling itself, and if your body's wasting time battling itself, it doesn't have enough time to take in all these nutrients, these vitamins, these minerals, because you're not even giving it the right amount. So your body doesn't have enough to process in the first place, and instead of being able to process it, you're now fighting your own self with inflammation. You're screwing over yourself twofold by not having enough these vitamins, minerals, and all these essential nutrients that we need, and two, chronic inflammation, which then takes focus off digestion and into you fighting yourself.
Yes. And you mentioned how the dopamine and serotonin gets affected, right? Those neurotransmitters, which is the bidirectional relationship between the mind and the gut.
Yes, sir. That was a doozy.
That was a really good episode.
Yeah. A lot of tangents, but I feel they were good tangents.
Yeah. Learned a lot technically. Wow. Just 1 hour of, we could probably sell this freaking video, man, or this podcast episode.
This is literally how the American diet has changed in the last, 80 years?
Yes.
It's crazy. You learn more right now in this 1 hour with us than you probably did all of history class. It probably took you 2 years of college to learn what you just learned right now.
Yeah. And not only are we talking about diet, but we also introduced economics into it and capitalism and gave you the full spectrum of how the evolution of the American diet has changed.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate you guys. See you guys in the next episode.
Peace. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show and want to support the podcast,
please subscribe, leave us a comment, or give us a like on all platforms
at We Are Frontline Warriors.